Well, please be seated. I am somewhat overwhelmed and very grateful. I want to thank all of you for that warm welcome, that over-the-top video, and especially thanks to Al and Kathleen, to Jim, with whom I served with such joy. All of you who are here, it is a great pleasure to celebrate the National Defense University because that's how I see this evening. We've already heard a lot about what NDU means to the men and women who serve our country. So many of the nation's leaders, both military and civilian, have benefited greatly from the intellectual exchange, the generation of ideas that came from their time at NDU. And it is a singular honor for me to receive this American Patriot Award. It is somewhat, well, to put it mildly, humbling. Many extraordinary people have received it in the past years, and I am deeply honored to be in their company. And when I learned that last year's award went to the men and women of the U.S. Special Operations Command, and my friend and colleague in so many efforts, Admiral McCraven was here, of course, to accept. I was told that the award ceremony included lots of videos of people parachuting out of airplanes. And I thought two things. First, the award committee really went in a different direction this year. I have flown in a lot of airplanes. I've never jumped out of one, and I will tell you right now, I have no plans to do so. I cannot follow in President George H.W. Bush's footsteps and start skydiving. But like all of you, I am deeply proud of the men and women who serve in our special forces. If anyone exemplifies patriotism and courage, it is, of course, them and all of you who have served in so many different capacities on behalf of the country that we cherish and love. So it is an extraordinary moment for me to be listed among them. Now, as someone who has worked closely with our nation's military leaders, especially during my time as a senator serving on the Armed Services Committee and then, of course, as Secretary of State, my appreciation for the skill, experience, know-how, and results-oriented toughness that I saw in those with whom I served was really awe-inspiring to me. It takes a lot to lead the most powerful military in history, to keep our nation safe in a rapidly changing world, and I saw that firsthand during my 4 years at the State Department. I was also proud to be responsible for the 70,000 people who worked for the State Department and USAID, and I found an abundance of those qualities in our diplomatic corps and our development experts. We are truly blessed if one thinks about the so-called 3 Ds of defense, diplomacy, and development, to have the best in the world in each of those categories. And many of them were trained and educated at NDU. So this university that we are here supporting this evening is helping to shape not only the future of our military, but also the future of our foreign policy and national security. Indeed, I would argue the future of our global leadership. And that is good news, because we need bold, innovative thinkers, along with leaders and warriors and peacemakers who can step back, take in all the changes happening, and say, here's where we want to go, and here's how we get there. Here's where our strategies are working. Here's where they need to change. And that kind of thinking happens every day at the National Defense University. In fact, one might argue it is one of the few places at the moment where it does happen in Washington. It is part of the routine of asking tough questions, breaking out of boxes and boundaries, refusing to live in what I sometimes call our capital an evidence-free zone, but instead to be constantly striving for the information, to use the experience, to develop the expertise in order to help us make better decisions, smarter decisions on behalf of our global leadership and on behalf of and in service to the citizens of America. Now, there is much I could talk about tonight because I have had such a unique set of experiences and greatly appreciated working with NDU on several discrete projects, as well as going over one day with Leon Panetta when he was Secretary of Defense to talk about the issues that we were both grappling with. But I want to single out one area in particular. It will not surprise you, but it might surprise you to hear that it is an area where NDU is breaking new ground. It's an area that is critical to the stability of the world and the success of our defense strategies abroad, and that is the role of women in peace and security. Now, NDU is publishing a book on this topic. There aren't many books in the world on this topic, but NDU will be publishing a book with essays by top experts from the military and across our government. Leon Panetta and I co-wrote the preface. Now, why would a former congressman, a former budget chief, a former CIA director, a former Secretary of Defense, a former First Lady, a former senator, a former Secretary of State do this? And why would NDU be the site for what will be groundbreaking work? Because we believe if we want to end and prevent conflicts, stop violence, protect civilians, and reach lasting peace agreements, we cannot do it without the participation of women. We need women to participate in strategy making, to have seats at peace negotiations, to have roles in rebuilding broken societies, to have their rights protected. Now, if you have participated in peace building somewhere in the world, you may have seen what women can bring to the table when they are allowed to do so, and sometimes even when they're not. When apartheid fell in South Africa, it was women who made sure the new constitution protected not only their rights, but other human rights like freedom of religion and freedom of expression. In Colombia, it was women who pushed the government and the FARC guerrillas to sit down to talk peace. And when those talks fell apart, it was women who organized a mass movement to get them back to the table. In Rwanda, women came together across ethnic lines to promote reconciliation and to help survivors of the genocide. And in Northern Ireland, women united to make sure that the Good Friday Agreement included a plan to integrate the two communities. In Liberia, market women, both Christian and Muslim, banded together and sat outside in the baking heat every day for months to force peace talks in the Civil War. And then they physically blocked the doors and windows where the talks were held so the men inside could not escape until they reached a resolution. And I would highly recommend, if you have not seen it, a documentary about what those women did called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. Now, one of my favorite stories is from Darfur. when the men who were negotiating to try to bring some peace to that strife-torn land, they deadlocked over control of a particular river during the 7th round of peace negotiations. It was local women who pointed out the river had already dried up, and there was no point arguing about it any longer. Now, over and over, in country after country, women have proven themselves to be a powerful force for peace, even in places where their political power is slight or non-existent. They're often the ones standing up and saying, to really end conflict, we need to think about jobs and housing and schools and policing, all the things we know to be critical to any stable society. And where conflicts have ended and women are able to participate more fully in government and the economy, their countries do better. 40 years of data confirm that those countries are less likely to resort to violence to manage crises. The wounds heal, the fabric of society is slowly stitched back together. Yet despite these examples from history and despite a growing body of research, too few leaders have caught on. More than half of all peace agreements fail within 5 years. Perhaps there is a correlation that fewer than 10% have any women negotiators, fewer than 3% have any women signatories, and only a small percentage even include a single reference to women. And this really does cut to the heart of our national security, and it cuts to the heart of global security. There are dozens of conflicts, very small to very large, raging around the world right now. They are ravaging populations, they're creating refugees, they're destroying towns and natural resources, they are ruining economies, and they are undermining regional and global security. Meanwhile, women are often sidelined, and it's an enormous wasted opportunity that impacts us all. But there is good news. Slowly but surely, the world is waking up to this. NATO just conducted a review of how well it's integrating women into its operations and missions. The G8 and the UN Security Council have focused more on the problem of sexual violence in conflict. Organizations like the International Crisis Group and UN Women are coming out with new research. And 2 years ago, the Nobel Committee awarded the Peace Prize to the leaders of that women's movement in Liberia, including Liberia's first woman president, my friend, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And I was very proud to be Secretary of State to help our country launch a national action plan, accompanied by an executive order of President Obama to ensure that across our government in defense, diplomacy, and development, we begin trying to work to incorporate women's perspectives and increase their participation. And we're seeing some tangible results. AFRICOM is working with the Botswana Defense Forces to increase the number of women who serve in their ranks. Civilian experts at the Pentagon are helping the Afghan ministries of defense and interior hire more women police officers. USAID just created its largest ever gender program also in Afghanistan. And if we pause just for a moment on Afghanistan, where the application of our national action plan is critical, we know the rights, indeed the very lives of women are at stake. And the talent of half the population is sorely needed. If Afghanistan is going to achieve sustainable peace, security, and economic opportunity. Tomorrow, Secretary Kerry, Laura Bush, and I will be at Georgetown University to discuss this issue. And then Mrs. Bush and I will chair a meeting of the U.S.-Afghan Women's Council. There will be remarkable women there. They have helped wrench their society thanks to the generosity and sacrifice of the American people out of the grips of the Taliban and toward a future of greater freedom and opportunity. They have participated in Loya Jirgas, they've run for office, they've advocated for the human rights of all Afghans, and they have supported the quest for peace and reconciliation. But I am sure I will hear tomorrow, as I have heard for 4 years, that the Afghan women and civil society leaders fear their rights will be sacrificed as our coalition troops finally get to come home and that country charts its post-2014 future. They are right to be concerned, because if we begin to see the rights and opportunities of Afghan women undermined, I would argue so too will we see Afghanistan's stability and prosperity undermined. We cannot afford to stand by silently while the hard-won gains of the past decade are squandered. And the United States must stand firmly for the rights of all Afghans, women first and foremost. Afghanistan should embrace and empower all of its people, including women. We know how hard that is, but women are out running for office. There's even women running for president in Afghanistan, and their voices deserve to be heard. So I hope that as we look to other countries to make progress, we understand how important that the United States continues to lead the way on security, set the priorities, assemble the coalitions, design the strategies. Because in the absence of our doing that, there really isn't anybody else. I hear all this talk about how we need to withdraw from the world. I've heard even tonight some references to the really unfortunate consequences of sequester and budget cuts. We have to decide if we intend to continue America's global leadership. Certainly women are a part of that, but it's a much larger discussion and debate that we must have. We have to make a decision, because we know very well, those of us here this evening, that American leadership is not a birthright. It has to be fought for and won every generation. So that means we all have more work to do, and we need more military leaders, defense strategists, intelligence experts, diplomats, development experts, all to understand the vision of where we must head today. And you will find in the new NDU volume that we believe women have a role to play in what American leadership on the global stage will look like in the 21st century. I am excited by what NDU does. I was very pleased to work with a lot of diplomats who spent time at NDU. They understood very well that while war may be waged and peace may be won, it's not sustainable unless it happens in the hearts and minds and the schoolrooms and the voting booths all over the world. We also hope that the private sector, so well represented here this evening, will take on some of these challenges as well. As you well know, broad-based economic activity flourishes in place where peace is the norm, and it is more likely to be successful in raising GDP living standards if women are empowered as well. So as we talk about the importance of our political reform and economic reform and how peace can be sustained, I want to thank NDU for taking this issue seriously. There is certainly a lot to be concerned about and worried about in the quick changing world that we inhabit. But we need more universities to join NDU in looking over the horizon, whether it's women and security or cybersecurity, whether it's old issues that have to be rethought or new issues we didn't even imagine. We need the sharpest thinking, the most airtight data, and that's what we get from NDU. So although I am honored to be honored, I would be here tonight in the absence of that fabulous award, to say thank you, to tell you how much I appreciate what you do, but to also challenge you that this is more important now than ever. Because there is a lot of uncertainty as to exactly how we will lead and manage our interests, our values, and protect our security. So please, continue to be a leader, continue to support NDU as you are doing today with the foundation, and know that you are playing an instrumental, essential role in helping us chart that future, a future of continuing, essential, indispensable American leadership. Thank you, and God bless the United States of America.